Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the broken coolant pipe in front of him. The metal was old, maybe 100 years old, and it leaked green fluid all over the floor. He had been working in the maintenance section of the playground for 6 months now, and every day felt the same. Fix pipes, replace wires, clean filters, and try not to annoy his boss. The playground was huge. It floated in space between 3 solar systems, and thousands of aliens came here every day to trade goods and information. There were tall blue creatures with 4 arms, small furry beings that squeaked when they talked, and massive rock-like aliens that moved very slowly. Jake had seen dozens of different species since arriving here, and most of them ignored him completely. Humans were new to the galaxy. Only 50 years ago, faster-than-light travel was discovered, and humans started meeting other species. But the galaxy was already old and crowded. Ancient civilizations had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, and they saw humans as children who just learned to walk. Nobody took humans seriously. Jake's supervisor was named Vrix, and he was an insect-like alien with 6 legs and sharp mandibles. Vrix never missed a chance to remind Jake how slow and stupid humans were. When Jake made mistakes, Vrix would click his mandibles together and say things like, "Typical mammal," or, "Your species will never learn." Today, Jake was alone in a restricted section of the station. Vrix had sent him to fix the coolant leak because nobody else wanted to work in the old abandoned corridors. The lights barely worked, and strange sounds echoed through the metal walls. Jake didn't mind being alone. It was better than listening to Vrix complain. He reached into his toolbox and pulled out a welding torch. The leak was worse than he thought, and he would need to seal the entire joint. He activated the torch and began heating the metal. Sparks flew in the dim light, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. Then something went wrong. The torch slipped in his hand, and the flame touched a panel on the wall. The panel lit up with red symbols that Jake had never seen before. He jumped back and turned off the torch, but it was too late. The symbols spread across the wall like fire, and a loud alarm began blaring throughout the corridor. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He had triggered something old and dangerous. He turned to run, but the floor beneath him began to shake. The wall in front of him split open with a hiss of ancient air, revealing a dark chamber beyond. Steam poured out of the opening, and Jake could barely see inside. He should have run. He should have called for help. But curiosity pulled him forward, and he stepped through the doorway. The chamber was enormous, much larger than it should have been. Strange machines lined the walls, covered in dust and glowing with faint blue light. In the center of the room stood a tall figure, twice Jake's height, covered in dark armor that looked like scales. The figure was perfectly still, and for a moment Jake thought it was a statue. Then the figure's eyes opened. They glowed like molten gold, and they fixed on Jake with an intensity that made him freeze in place. The figure moved, stepping down from a raised platform with smooth, powerful movements. As it came closer, Jake could see that the armor was not just metal but something alive, shifting and flowing like liquid. The figure was female, with sharp features and long silver hair that floated around her head as if underwater. She spoke, and her voice was deep and commanding. But Jake didn't understand the words. They were in a language he had never heard, ancient and musical. The figure paused and tilted her head, studying Jake like a scientist examining a bug. Then she raised one hand, and a device on her wrist projected a hologram into the air. Symbols and images flashed past too quickly for Jake to follow, and then the device beeped. The figure spoke again, this time in a language Jake could understand, though her accent was strange. "You are human." Jake nodded, unable to find his voice. The figure stepped closer, and Jake could smell something like cinnamon and smoke. She reached out with one armored hand and touched his forehead. Jake felt a tingling sensation like electricity running through his brain. "Fascinating," the figure said. "You carry the old blood. Weak, diluted, barely awake. But it is there." Jake found his voice. "Who are you?" The figure smiled, and her teeth were sharp. "I am Cathara, Empress of the Draconite people. Though I see my empire is long gone and the galaxy has forgotten us." Jake's mind raced. He had heard stories about ancient civilizations that disappeared long ago, but he never thought they were real. "How long have you been asleep?" Cathara's smile faded. 10,000 years, perhaps more. My people placed me in stasis when our empire fell. They hoped I would wake to a better age." She looked around the dusty chamber and sighed. "But it seems the age has only grown duller. She turned her golden eyes back to Jake. Tell me, little human, what has become of the galaxy? Jake didn't know where to start. He told her about the major powers that controlled the galaxy now, the Zenthari Collective and the Orvesh Federation. He explained how humans were the newest species, how they struggled to find their place among older and stronger civilizations. Cathara listened carefully, and her expression grew more amused with each word. When Jake finished, she laughed, a sound like thunder rolling across mountains. So the children are playing at Empire now, she said, and my little experiment has grown into a thinking species. She reached out and patted Jake on the head like he was a pet. How delightful. Jake stepped back, confused and slightly annoyed. What experiment? Cathara's smile widened. Humans, of course. Your species was seeded by my people millions of years ago. You are distant children of the Draconite bloodline, though you have forgotten how to breathe fire. Jake stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. Before he could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Security was coming. Cathara's expression turned serious. It seems our meeting has attracted attention. She looked at Jake with an intensity that made him shiver. You have awakened me, little hatchling, and now you are my responsibility. I will teach you what you have forgotten. I will make you remember how to burn. She grabbed Jake's arm and the world dissolved into light. Jake woke up with a terrible headache. His whole body felt strange, like he had been pulled apart and put back together wrong. He opened his eyes and saw a ceiling made of black metal covered in glowing blue lines. This was not his tiny apartment in the maintenance quarters. He sat up quickly and immediately regretted it. The room spun around him and his stomach felt sick. He was lying on a bed that seemed to adjust to his body, soft in some places and firm in others. The room was circular, with curved walls covered in strange symbols that shifted and moved when he looked at them. You are awake. Good. Cathara's voice came from somewhere to his left. Jake turned and saw the dragon Empress, standing near a window that showed the stars outside. She had removed most of her armor, and now wore a simple black suit that still looked more advanced than anything Jake had ever seen. Her silver hair was tied back, and without the armor she looked less intimidating, though her golden eyes still glowed faintly. Where am I? Jake asked, his voice rough. My ship, the Ember Crown, Cathara replied. It has been hidden in the asteroid field near your station for 10,000 years. When I went into stasis, I programmed it to wait for me. She turned to look at him. You triggered the beacon when you activated the old security system. Thank you for that, by the way. Jake rubbed his head, trying to remember everything that happened. Security was coming. How did we escape? Cathara smiled. I teleported us. Simple Draconite technology, though it seems the current galaxy has forgotten how to fold space properly. She walked over to him and looked him up and down. You handled the transition well. Most species vomit for hours after their first teleport. Jake felt his stomach lurch at the mention of vomiting, but he managed to keep everything down. He stood up on shaky legs and looked around the room. Everything was smooth and organic looking, like the ship had been grown instead of built. What happens now? The station security will be looking for us. Let them look, Cathara said with a dismissive wave. They cannot find this ship unless I want them to. The Ember Crown uses stealth systems that make it invisible to their primitive sensors. She walked to a wall and touched it, and the wall opened up to reveal shelves filled with strange objects. But you are correct that we have limited time. The station authorities will investigate the chamber where I was sleeping, and they will find records of my people. That will cause problems. She pulled out a small device that looked like a metal spider and handed it to Jake. Put this on your wrist. Jake took the device carefully. It was warm to the touch and seemed to be alive, its legs twitching slightly. What is it? A neural interface, Cathara explained. It will allow you to connect with Draconite technology and begin unlocking the potential in your genetics. She saw his hesitation and sighed. Do not worry, it will not hurt much. Jake swallowed hard and placed the device on his wrist. The metal legs immediately wrapped around his arm and pierced his skin. He gasped as pain shot through his arm, but the device released something into his bloodstream that made the pain fade quickly. The spider flattened against his skin and became almost invisible, just a faint outline on his wrist. Cathara nodded in approval. Good. Now your body will begin adapting. The interface contains billions of nanomachines that will repair damage and enhance your natural abilities. In a few days, you will start to feel different. Jake stared at his wrist, feeling a strange tingling sensation spreading up his arm. You're changing me? Without asking? Cathera raised an eyebrow. Would you have said no? She didn't wait for an answer. You are already changing, little hatchling. From the moment I touched your mind, I activated dormant sequences in your DNA. The nanomachines will simply help the process along and keep you from dying during the transformation. That was not reassuring. Jake sat back down on the bed, feeling overwhelmed. Why are you doing this? What do you want from me? Cathera's expression softened slightly. I want nothing from you, but I am responsible for your species, whether you know it or not. My people seeded Earth with modified DNA millions of years ago. We wanted to create a species that would inherit our knowledge if we ever fell. She looked out at the stars again. We did fall, but we never returned to check on our experiment. You humans grew and evolved on your own, forgetting the fire that sleeps in your blood. She turned back to Jake. I am alone now, the last of my kind. But you and your species carry a piece of what we were. I can teach you to remember, to become what you were meant to be. Or I can leave you as you are, weak and ignored by a galaxy that sees you as children. Jake thought about his life on the playground. The constant disrespect, the way aliens looked through him like he was invisible, the feeling that humans would always be second-class citizens among the stars. What would I become? Cathera smiled. Something better, something that burns. Over the next several days, Jake learned what it meant to be Cathera's student. She was not a gentle teacher. Every morning she woke him before the ship's artificial dawn and put him through exercises that left him gasping and sweating. She taught him to meditate, to feel the energy flowing through his body, to sense the electrical currents in the ship's systems. The nanomachines worked constantly, and Jake could feel them changing him. His senses became sharper. He could hear the hum of the ship's engines through the walls, could smell the recycled air with new clarity, could see details in the dim light that he never noticed before. His body temperature rose slightly, and he no longer felt cold in the ship's corridors. Cathera taught him about Draconite history, about an empire that spanned 1,000 worlds and lasted for 50,000 years. She showed him holographic records of cities that floated in the clouds of gas giants, of ships that could travel between galaxies, of weapons that could shatter planets. But she also showed him why her people fell. We became too comfortable, she explained one evening as they ate a meal together. The food was strange but surprisingly good, synthesized by the ship from raw materials. We stopped growing, stopped striving. We retreated into virtual worlds where we could be gods, and we forgot about the real universe. By the time we realized our mistake, it was too late. Other species had grown strong and they resented our power. Wars broke out and we were too soft to fight them properly. Jake listened carefully, absorbing every word. But you survived. I was a warrior, Cathera said. I refused to abandon reality. I fought to save what I could, but in the end I could only save myself and a few others. We went into stasis, hoping to wake when the galaxy needed us again. She looked at Jake with those golden eyes. And now I am awake, and I find that the galaxy has grown even weaker in our absence. The species that rule now, the Xanthari and the others, they use technology they barely understand. They are children playing with toys. She reached across the table and tapped Jake's wrist where the neural interface sat. But you, little hatchling, you have the potential to be more. Your species has the fire inside them waiting to wake up, and I will teach you how to use it. Jake felt that strange tingling again, stronger this time, like electricity running under his skin. Jake's transformation came faster than he expected. 3 weeks after Cathera woke him with the neural interface, his body no longer felt like his own. He was stronger now, his muscles more defined even though he wasn't exercising any differently. His reflexes were faster, and sometimes he moved before he consciously decided to move, like his body was thinking on its own. The most disturbing change was the heat. Jake's body temperature had risen to nearly 40 degrees, hot enough that it should have killed him, but he felt fine. Better than fine, actually. He felt alive in a way he never had before. Energy seemed to flow through his veins, and sometimes when he got excited or angry, his hands would spark with small electrical discharges. Cathera watched his progress with approval. She pushed him harder each day, teaching him to control the energy building inside him. They practiced in an abandoned cargo bay that Cathera had claimed as a training area. The bay was huge and empty, with metal walls scarred from years of use. Focus, Cathara commanded, standing across from him with her arms crossed. The energy is not separate from you. It is you. Your cells are learning to generate and store electrical potential, just as mine do. You must learn to direct it. Jake stood in the center of the bay, his eyes closed, trying to feel the energy she kept talking about. It was there, a tingling warmth in his chest and stomach, but every time he tried to grab it, it slipped away like water. Stop thinking, Cathara said. Thinking is too slow. You must feel, must act on instinct. Easy for her to say. Jake took a deep breath and tried again. He imagined the warmth in his chest as a ball of light, and he imagined pushing it out through his arms into his hands. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his palms began to glow faintly, and small arcs of electricity danced between his fingers. Good, Cathara said. Now direct it. She gestured, and a target appeared on the far wall, a metal plate that hummed with power. Jake stared at it, feeling the electricity building in his hands. He thrust his palms forward, trying to push the energy toward the target. The electricity leaped from his hands in a wild, uncontrolled burst. It missed the target completely and hit the ceiling, scorching the metal and triggering a small fire suppression system. Foam sprayed down on Jake's head, and he stood there dripping and embarrassed. Cathara laughed, a sound that echoed through the cargo bay. You have power, hatchling, but no control. Again. They practiced for hours until Jake could barely stand. His hands were burned and blistered, though the nanomachines healed them within minutes. Slowly, painfully, he learned to control the energy. By the end of the session, he could hit the target more often than not, sending focused bolts of electricity across the bay. But Cathara was not satisfied. Electricity is the beginning, she said. But the true gift of the Draconites is fire, not lightning. You must learn to convert electrical energy into heat, to ignite the very air around you. Jake didn't know how that was possible, but he was learning not to question Cathara's teachings. If she said he could breathe fire, then maybe he could. While Jake trained, the world outside was changing. Word of Cathara's awakening had spread through the playground's underground networks. Smugglers and information brokers whispered about the Dragon Empress, about ancient technology and power beyond imagination. Some saw opportunity while others saw danger. The playground's official government, a council made up of representatives from a dozen species, was in chaos. The Zenthari Collective, the most powerful faction in the galaxy, had sent a diplomatic team to investigate. They wanted Cathara handed over to their custody, claiming that the Draconites were a dangerous extinct species that had been destroyed for good reason. Commander Vorath, the Zenthari security chief on the playground, made it his personal mission to find Cathara and Jake. He increased patrols throughout the station and offered rewards for information. But the Ember Crown remained hidden, invisible in the asteroid field, and Jake stayed out of sight. One evening, after a particularly brutal training session, Jake sat with Cathara in the ship's observation room. The room had a transparent floor that showed the stars below, creating the illusion that they were floating in space. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Why did your people really fall? Jake asked. He had been thinking about this question for days. You say they became soft, but that doesn't explain everything. What really happened? Cathara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than usual. We stopped having children. For thousands of years, we extended our lives through technology, living for tens of thousands of years. We thought we had conquered death, but we forgot that life without death is meaningless. Without the cycle of birth and death, we stopped growing, stopped changing. We became frozen in time. She looked at Jake with an expression he couldn't read. Your species is young and short-lived. You humans die after barely 100 years. I used to think that was pathetic, but now I see it differently. Your short lives force you to matter, to make each moment count. You cannot afford to become stagnant because you don't have time. Jake had never thought about human mortality that way. Is that why you're teaching me? Because humans can be what your people couldn't? Perhaps, Cathara admitted. Or perhaps I am simply lonely and you are the closest thing to family I have left in this universe. She smiled slightly. Either way, you are stuck with me, hatchling. The next day, everything changed. Jake was in the middle of training, attempting to generate enough heat to ignite a pile of synthetic material, when alarms blared throughout the ship. Cathara appeared instantly, her armor forming around her body from liquid metal. We have been found, she said grimly. Multiple ships are approaching, Zenthari military vessels. Someone must have tracked us. Jake felt his heart pound in his chest. What do we do? We fight, Cathera said simply. They will try to board the ship and capture us. I will handle the ships, but you must defend the cargo bay entrance if they manage to board. She handed him a weapon, a staff made of the same living metal as her armor. Channel your energy through this. It will amplify your power and give you reach. Jake took the staff and it felt warm in his hands, almost alive. He could feel it responding to the energy in his body, humming with potential. Cathera placed a hand on his shoulder. This is your first real test, Jake Morrison. Show me that my faith in you was not misplaced. Show me that humans can still breathe fire. Then she was gone, teleporting to the ship's bridge. Jake ran to the cargo bay and took up a defensive position near the main entrance. His hands were shaking, but the staff felt steady in his grip. He didn't have to wait long. The ship shuddered as something attached to the hull, and then the cargo bay door began to glow red as cutting torches worked from the outside. Jake took a deep breath and felt the energy building in his body, hotter and stronger than ever before. The door exploded inward, and Xanthari soldiers poured through, their weapons raised. They were tall, blue-skinned aliens in powered armor, and there were at least 20 of them. Jake didn't think. He acted on instinct just as Cathera had taught him. He thrust the staff forward and released everything he had been holding inside. Fire erupted from the staff. Not just electricity, but true flames, superheated plasma that turned the air white-hot. The blast caught the first wave of soldiers and sent them flying backward, their armor melting and their weapons exploding. The heat was so intense that Jake's skin should have burned, but the nanomachines protected him, channeling the excess energy safely through his body. More soldiers came, and Jake met them with fire and lightning. He moved without thinking, the staff spinning in his hands, each strike releasing bursts of energy that lit up the cargo bay like a sun. He was burning, truly burning, and it felt glorious. When the last soldier fell, Jake stood alone in the scorched cargo bay, breathing hard, his body glowing with residual heat. He had done it. He had breathed fire just like Cathera said he would. The battle at the cargo bay made Jake famous across the galaxy in a matter of hours. The Xanthari soldiers who survived the encounter reported what they saw. A human mechanic wielding powers that should not exist, burning with fire that melted military-grade armor like plastic. Video footage leaked onto the galactic networks, showing Jake wreathed in flames, his eyes glowing with golden light just like Cathera's. Humanity had never been so visible before. On Earth and in the scattered human colonies, people watched the footage in shock and wonder. Some called Jake a hero, a sign that humans were more than the galaxy believed. Others called him dangerous, a weapon created by an ancient alien who might be manipulating humanity for her own purposes. The Terran Union, the weak coalition that represented humanity in galactic politics, scrambled to figure out what to do. Some politicians wanted to support Jake and embrace whatever gifts Cathera was offering. Others wanted to distance themselves from the situation, afraid of provoking the powerful Xanthari collective. Jake himself was dealing with the aftermath of his transformation. After the battle, his body had gone into something like shock. The amount of energy he released should have killed him, but the nanomachines kept him alive, repairing cellular damage faster than it occurred. He spent 2 days in the ship's medical bay, floating in a tank of healing gel while his body stabilized. When he finally woke up, Cathera was waiting for him. She looked pleased, which was rare. You exceeded my expectations, hatchling. That was not fire but plasma, matter heated to millions of degrees. Most Draconites took decades to learn that trick. Jake sat up slowly, feeling stronger than before but also different. His skin had a faint shimmer to it now, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. I don't remember much of the fight. It was like something else took over. That was your instinct awakening, Cathera explained. The Draconite battle mind encoded in your DNA. When you are in danger, your body knows what to do even if your conscious mind does not. She paused. But we cannot stay hidden any longer. The Xanthari know where we are, and they will send more ships. We must return to the playground and face what comes. Jake knew she was right. Running would solve nothing. If he was going to be humanity's symbol, whatever that meant, then he needed to stand in the open and face the consequences. They returned to the playground under a flag of truce. Cathera transmitted a message to the station council, announcing their return and requesting a formal hearing. The council, terrified of another battle near the station, agreed immediately. The hearing took place in the Grand Assembly Hall, a massive chamber at the heart of the playground where representatives from dozens of species gathered. Jake had never been inside before. The hall was circular, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Holographic displays showed the faces of representatives who were attending remotely from across the galaxy. Jake stood on the central platform with Cathara beside him. He wore simple clothes, refusing the formal attire that the Terran Union had sent him. He wanted the galaxy to see him as he was, a mechanic who stumbled into something bigger than himself. The Zenthari representative, Ambassador Kelvin, spoke first. He was a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms, dressed in elaborate robes that marked his high status. The Zenthari Collective demands that this Draconite criminal be taken into custody immediately. Her species was eliminated 10,000 years ago for good reason. They were tyrants who experimented on lesser species without consent, who created weapons of mass destruction, who believed themselves superior to all other life. Cathara laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber.
The Zenthari accuse me of tyranny?
Your species fought 3 wars of extermination against neighboring civilizations. You enslaved the Orvesh for 2,000 years before they broke free. You speak of morality while your empire is built on the bones of conquered worlds. Ambassador Kelvin's face darkened. Ancient history. The collective has evolved beyond such primitive behavior. Have you? Cathara challenged. Or have you simply learned to disguise your tyranny as democracy? She gestured to the assembled representatives. Half the species in this chamber are client states of the Zenthari, required to follow your laws and pay tribute. That sounds like empire to me. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some representatives looked uncomfortable, while others nodded in agreement. Jake realized that not everyone was happy with Zenthari dominance. A new voice spoke up, and Jake recognized Lisa Hayes, the information broker who ran one of the largest smuggling networks on the playground. She was a human woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair. I have a question for Ambassador Kelvin. Why are the Zenthari so afraid of one Draconite and one enhanced human? You sent a military fleet to capture them. That seems excessive for 2 individuals, unless you believe they pose a real threat to your power. Ambassador Kelvin glared at her. We are not afraid. We are being cautious. The Draconites had technology that could destroy entire star systems. If that knowledge were to spread, it could destabilize the entire galaxy. Or it could give species like humanity a chance to stand on equal footing with the Zenthari, Lisa replied smoothly. Which is what really frightens you, isn't it? The idea that smaller, weaker species might become strong enough to challenge your authority. The chamber erupted in arguments, representatives shouting over each other in a dozen different languages. Jake stood silent, watching it all unfold. He caught Lisa's eye and she gave him a small nod. She was helping him, creating chaos that made it harder for the Zenthari to push their agenda. Finally, the council chairwoman, an elderly alien from a neutral species, called for order. Enough. We will not solve this by shouting. She turned to Jake. You have been silent, young human. What do you have to say? Do you believe the Draconite has corrupted you, turned you into a weapon? Jake thought carefully before answering. Every eye in the chamber was on him, and his words would be broadcast across the galaxy. I was a nobody before I met Cathara. I fixed pipes and cleaned filters, and aliens like Vrix treated me like I was stupid because I'm human. Nobody respected my species. Nobody thought we mattered. He held up his hand and small sparks danced between his fingers. Cathara didn't corrupt me. She showed me what humans could be, what we already are but forgot. She's not turning me into a weapon. She's teaching me to be something more than what the galaxy expects. He looked directly at Ambassador Kelvin. The Zenthari are afraid because they've been comfortable for too long. They've ruled the galaxy for thousands of years and they don't want that to change. But change is coming whether they like it or not. Humanity is just the beginning. The chamber fell silent. Jake's words hung in the air like smoke. Cathara placed a hand on his shoulder. Well spoken, hatchling. She addressed the chamber. I offer the galaxy a choice. Work with me, learn from what the Draconites knew and grow stronger together. Or try to suppress this knowledge, hunt me down and watch as humanity rises anyway, because I am not the only one who can teach them. The knowledge is in their blood waiting to wake up. I am simply the catalyst. Ambassador Kelvin stood abruptly. The Zenthari Collective will not negotiate with terrorists and ancient relics. If this council refuses to act, we will. He turned and walked out of the chamber, his entourage following. The chairwoman sighed. This session is adjourned. We will reconvene tomorrow to discuss next steps. As the crowd dispersed, Lisa Hayes approached Jake and Cathara. Up close, Jake could see the intelligence in her eyes, the careful calculation of someone who survived by reading people. That was quite a speech, mechanic. You've made enemies today, but also allies. Cathara studied her. You are an information broker. What do you want? Lisa smiled. I want what everyone in this station wants, a chance to profit from chaos. The Zinthari monopoly on power has made the galaxy stagnant. New players mean new opportunities. She handed Jake a data chip. These are contacts, species, and individuals who would be interested in supporting humanity's rise. Not out of kindness, but because they see advantage in it. Jake took the chip. You're saying we can't do this alone? Nobody does anything alone in this galaxy, Lisa replied. Even the Zinthari needed centuries and countless allies to build their empire. If you want humanity to matter, you'll need friends. She glanced at Cathara. Even ancient empresses need allies. Cathara nodded slowly. Wise words. Perhaps humans have learned more than I thought in my absence. That night, Jake stood on an observation deck, watching ships come and go from the playground. His reflection in the window showed a stranger. Eyes that glowed faintly golden, skin that shimmered with heat, hands that could create fire from nothing. He barely recognized himself. But for the first time since this all began, he felt like he had a purpose. The Zinthari fleet arrived 3 days later, bigger and more threatening than before. 50 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the playground system, their weapons powered and ready. The message was clear: surrender Cathara and Jake or face destruction. The playground's council panicked. Half the representatives wanted to hand over Jake and Cathara immediately. The other half argued for neutrality, insisting that the station should not bow to Zinthari threats. But nobody had a real solution, and the fleet was getting closer with each passing hour. Jake stood in the Ember Crown's bridge, watching the tactical display as the enemy ships advanced. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. The training Cathara had put him through had changed more than just his body. He felt calmer under pressure, more focused. Cathara sat in the command chair, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. The playground was built on top of an old Draconite outpost, she explained. I discovered this when I accessed the station's deep infrastructure. My people left defense systems here, buried under 10,000 years of new construction. With your help, I can activate them. Jake turned to her. My help? What can I do? The defense systems require massive amounts of power to activate, Cathara said. More power than the Ember Crown can generate alone. But you, my little hatchling, you have become a living battery. You can channel energy in ways that most beings cannot. Together, we can wake the old defenses and give the playground teeth. She stood and walked to him, placing both hands on his shoulders. But I must warn you, this will be dangerous. The amount of energy you will need to channel could kill you if you lose control. Jake thought about everything that had happened, about the life he had before Cathara woke up, about the future that was possible if humanity could stand proud among the stars. Tell me what to do. They moved quickly. Cathara transmitted her plan to the playground's council, offering to defend the station using ancient Draconite systems. The council, desperate and out of options, agreed. They gave Cathara access to the station's deep infrastructure, areas that had been sealed and forgotten for thousands of years. Jake followed Cathara through narrow maintenance tunnels that descended into the oldest part of the station. The walls here were made of different materials than the modern sections, darker and covered in symbols that hurt his eyes to look at. The air felt heavy, charged with potential energy. They reached a chamber at the station's core, a vast space filled with machinery that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. Massive towers of crystalline material rose from the floor to the ceiling, each one pulsing with faint blue light. In the center of the chamber stood a platform with 2 contact points, one for Cathara and one for Jake. The defense system draws power from subspace, Cathara explained as they stepped onto the platform, but it needs a catalyst to activate. Living beings who can channel and direct that power. The Draconites who built this place intended for multiple individuals to operate it. But we are only 2. We will have to be enough. Jake placed his hands on the contact points and immediately felt electricity surge through his body. It was like being struck by lightning, except the lightning never stopped. Energy poured into him from somewhere beyond normal space, filling him up like a cup under a waterfall. "Control it," Cathara commanded, her own body glowing with power. "Do not fight the flow, guide it. Shape it with your will." Jake gritted his teeth and tried to do as she said. The energy wanted to explode out of him, to burn everything around him to ash. But he thought about his training, about the hours spent learning to control flames and electricity. He imagined the energy as a river, and himself as the banks that guided its flow. The crystalline towers began to glow brighter, responding to the power flowing through Jake and Cathara. The ancient systems woke up one by one, humming with energy that made the entire station vibrate. On the playground surface, defensive weapons emerged from hidden ports, weapons that had not been seen in 10,000 years. The Xanthari fleet detected the change immediately. Ambassador Kelvin, commanding from the flagship, stared at his sensors in disbelief. "What are they doing? Those energy signatures are impossible." His tactical officer looked pale. "Sir, the station is armed. Weapon systems of unknown type are powering up. Energy readings are off the scale." Kelvin felt a cold fear settle in his stomach. He had read the old records about the Draconites, about their weapons that could crack planets. "Prepare to withdraw," he ordered. But his admiral, a military officer named Gregory Kane, refused. "We cannot retreat. The collective sent us to deal with this threat. If we flee, we show weakness to the entire galaxy. Better to show weakness than to die," Kelvin argued. But Kane overruled him, ordering the fleet to continue advancing. In the control chamber, Jake felt the defense systems lock onto the approaching fleet. The weapons were asking for permission to fire, waiting for him and Cathara to give the command. He could feel each ship out there, could sense their positions as clearly as if he could see them with his eyes. "They are not withdrawing," Cathara said, foolish but predictable. The Xanthari have been unchallenged for so long that they have forgotten how to be afraid. She looked at Jake. "What do you want to do, hatchling? This is your species' moment. The choice should be yours." Jake thought about firing, about destroying the fleet and showing the galaxy that humanity would not be pushed around. But he also thought about all the lives on those ships, soldiers who were just following orders, who had families and dreams of their own. "Give them one more chance," he said. "Show them what we can do, but let them choose to leave." Cathara smiled. Mercy, an interesting choice. She adjusted the controls, and the defense system fired a warning shot. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the playground, crossing the distance to the Xanthari fleet in an instant. It passed between two of the warships without touching them, but the backwash from the beam's passage disabled both vessels, their shields collapsing and their systems shutting down. The remaining ships stopped advancing immediately. On the flagship, Admiral Kane stared at the tactical display in horror. "What was that?" His tactical officer's voice shook. "Unknown energy weapon, sir. If that beam had hit us directly, it would have vaporized the entire ship." They missed on purpose. Kelvin grabbed Kane's arm. "They are giving us a chance to withdraw. Take it, you fool, before they stop being merciful." For a long moment, Kane hesitated, pride warring with survival instinct. Then he gave the order to retreat. The Xanthari fleet turned and jumped back into faster-than-light travel, leaving the disabled ships behind. In the control chamber, Jake released his breath and let the energy flow stop. His body felt like it had been burned from the inside out, but the nanomachines were already working to repair the damage. He collapsed to his knees, exhausted. Cathara knelt beside him. "You did well, Jake Morrison. You showed strength and mercy, a combination that true leaders possess. Your species should be proud." Jake laughed weakly. "I just didn't want to start a war." "Perhaps," Cathara said. "But sometimes avoiding war requires showing that you could win one." She helped him to his feet. "Come, the galaxy is watching and we should give them something to remember." They emerged from the deep chambers to find the playground in chaos. News of the battle had spread instantly, and crowds filled the corridors, aliens from dozens of species all talking at once. When Jake and Cathara appeared, the crowds parted, and silence fell. Lisa Hayes was there, along with a dozen other humans who had lived on the playground. They looked at Jake with expressions of awe and hope. Behind them, representatives from other species watched carefully, calculating what this meant for the balance of power. Jake realized that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer the ignored newcomer, the species that nobody took seriously. They were now a force to be reckoned with, and every decision he made from now on would ripple across the galaxy. Kethera stepped forward and addressed the crowd, her voice amplified by the station's communication system so that everyone could hear. Let this day be remembered. Humanity has awakened to its true potential, and the galaxy must acknowledge them as equals. I am Kethera, last of the Draconites, and I declare humans to be under my protection. Any species that threatens them threatens me. She turned to Jake. But I am old and my time is ending. The future belongs to the young, to species like humanity who still have the fire to grow and change. Jake Morrison is my student and my heir. He carries the knowledge of the Draconites, and he will teach others of his kind. The fire rises, and it will not be extinguished. Jake felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. He looked out at the crowd, at the humans who saw him as a symbol of hope, at the aliens who saw him as a threat or an opportunity. He thought about the galaxy that waited beyond the playground, full of species and civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. He was just a mechanic who fixed pipes. But he was also something more now, something that burned with ancient fire. He raised his hand and flames danced between his fingers, bright and beautiful and impossible to ignore. I'm ready, he said quietly to Kethera. Teach me everything, she smiled. That, my hatchling, will take a lifetime. But we have time. She looked up at the stars visible through the station's window.